with this community once in the past, and so it's always great to talk with people that are interested in transitioning into the impact finance space. Again, my name is Ashley Lewis, and I am the co-founder of Impact Finance Pro. I'm also a practitioner myself. I'm an impact investor. I'm the director of Africa for an impact fund focused on inclusive fintech. And so I've been based in this region for nearly a decade now. And I'm based in Lagos, Nigeria. So, but I spend a lot of my time all over the continent, from South Africa to Egypt to Kenya and beyond. And back in 2016, I actually founded this platform because I had so many people from my professional career. I used to work in investment management in the US. So many people from my passing, I want to transition into a more impactful finance career. How do I do it? What does that look like? And I started informally kind of using my network to connect professionals, to mentor them through the process as well. And that led me to found this platform, which is essentially helping to educate, mentor, and place talent into impact finance positions. And so that's a little bit about who I am and what I do, but I really want to dive into my top tips for making that transition, because it's not, this sector is not as linear, and it's not as clear. It hasn't been around as long as, say, for example, management consulting or investment banking. And so I think it's really helpful to provide a little bit more guidance and support for individuals that are going through the process. So I have 10 tips. Let's see how many we can get through. I think I'm going to spend some time probably centering around 5 of them that I think are extremely critical. And then if anybody joins my breakout room, we can talk about some of the others later on today. But let's actually start with, I think the critical first step is understanding your why. You are all here because you are passionate about this subject. You're interested in moving forward in your career in the impact finance space. But oftentimes I find that talent that are looking to get into the sector have a hard time articulating their why and making it very crisp and beyond saying, I want to use my background in XYZ for a greater social impact. I think that that's a fantastic first start, but you can actually go a few layers deeper. And we actually develop for our clients what we call a personal impact thesis, which actually reviews your personal why across a few different axes. So your why when it comes to financial returns, your why when it comes to what social impact means for you, your why when it comes to how you want to work on a day-to-day basis. That's actually going to help inform the type of organizations that you go after in your career pursuit, but it will also help you when you're getting in front of decision makers and going through the interview process, better articulate your why, and it comes through with sincerity and authenticity. The second tip that I have is, exploring the entire employment landscape. And so what I often see is that a lot of people say, I want to get into the impact finance space, and they focus so narrowly on impact investing or more venture capital style approaches to impact finance. And there is such a breadth of opportunities in this space. It's actually quite beautiful the way that this space has transformed and grown over the last few decades. That means that there are different kinds of roles, all the way from capital allocating to non-capital allocating. You can actually carve out a really great niche for yourself based off of your backgrounds and interests. It's not only about deploying capital into organizations anymore. And so first, taking a look at the wide spectrum of organizations in the sector would be super helpful, and understanding why those actors exist and their clear differentiation as well in the market can also help you maybe find something that you didn't know existed in the past. And then the third one, it kind of goes mapping out the sector, but also mapping out the roles, right? And there are a number of platforms that kind of help job seekers make that transition. Our platform, Impact Finance Pro, is one of them, where we have a job board where people can find roles. But there's also things like the GIN, Impact Alpha. There are a few other, DevX is another one, a few other platforms that can kind of help you find roles that could be a better fit for you as well. This next tip is one of my favorite ones, and it actually helps me describe what my career transition into the sector has been, which is bridging to where you want to go. Now, what does that mean exactly? Oftentimes, I look at our kind of career experience from what I call the tripod method. This is what we work with our clients on. And that's identifying kind of three core legs of your tripod, which I've seen be kind of successful, or see, I should say this, I've seen talent transition successfully who have really focused on this tripod. So the tripod is quantitative skill, sectoral expertise, or regional expertise. And if you think about yourself, you might be able to identify which of your tripod legs is very strong and sturdy, and which might need to be further reinforced, or you might need a little bit more support on. And that allows you to bridge to where you want to go. So if you know that only one of the legs of your tripod is very strong and you really need to focus on other two, that might identify maybe an intermediary step in your career experience that would help you better transition into the space. It might also inform the kind of volunteer opportunities that you take advantage of, or the advisory work. Maybe you want to better understand the energy sector. You might be able to use your existing core expertise and provide support to early stage ventures, or do some side consulting work to help bolster that. So that's what I would really recommend. My career, I used a lot of bridging. I started in institutional asset management in the US. I quit my job. I moved to rural Togo and lived there for 2 years on $8 a day. The term like impact finance or even impact investing did not exist at the time. It was all about microfinance institutions. But I knew that I wanted to really bridge and marry the finance sector with the social impact sector, but I didn't have the language. I didn't really have the career trajectory in front of me to create that. And so what ended up happening is I created a bridge to allow me to build my skill set. And that led me to make my next transition into an impact finance organization, an impact investment fund. And I've been within the sector ever since. And so don't be afraid to take a lateral move or to explore and do something that might be unconventional for yourself in order to get to where you're going. So remember the tripod method, write those ones down. The next one is actually quite a given, but I'm going to talk about it from a different perspective. So this is a very network-driven industry, right? I think that you probably all have experienced that in your time thus far. But a lot of times people want to network upwards. The reality is networking laterally or to people that might be in a more junior role can be extremely helpful in your pursuit of better understanding the sector, and also getting people on the phone or in person to meet and help you better understand what those organizations are about, if they would be a good fit for you, and what you could do to have a better successful transition into those organizations. And so I like to do a lot of lateral networking. And so, and I will be honest, a lot of the impact finance organizations, a lot of the senior leaders in those organizations are inundated with requests to meet. And that could literally be their full-time job if they allowed it to be that. The reality is sometimes if you get an analyst or an associate on the phone, you can have a full 1 hour conversation, hour and a half conversation, and they are so excited to talk about the cool work that they're doing. They're usually willing to be very liberal about what their experience has been, and that might give you deeper insight into the institution or the sector that you're actually trying to get. So think about that, networking laterally or networking with individuals that might be in a more supportive role for you as you were transitioning. My next tip is about speaking the language of impact, being fluent in impact, right? And that is all about literally using and understanding the right terminology. There is Oh, let me put it like this. In a hiring position or somebody that's involved in the sector, it can be sometimes off-putting when you're meeting with candidates who are super well qualified, might have come from really strong backgrounds, but just don't understand. We're not speaking the same language. They haven't done the same amount of effort and research to understand, the language of our industry. And when they try to kind of superimpose some of the language from their old industry, it just does not land very well. It kind of falls a little flat. And so I would highly recommend, sometimes it's not the most fun work, but there are so many research reports out there. There are so many kind of courses. You're already doing some of this work just to be able to speak a little bit more fluently the language of impact. And that goes a long way. If I'm on the other side of the table, either in the interview process or just networking, it feels good when that person kind of understands the terminology and it's a much more fluid conversation. So I could see that Ani's putting some resources in the chat. So like the GIN is a great one where you can find really deeply researched resources that can kind of help guide you along that path of better understanding the language of the industry. And this also seems like a basic one, but my next tip is obviously kind of rooted in what I just mentioned, doing the research. And I cannot stress this enough. When I talk about doing the research, it's not just the high level information about the sector, but as you're getting in front of decision makers and hiring managers, really understanding the inner workings of the organization that you're working for. And that might seem basic, but I can count on, well, no, I can't even count on both hands how many times I've interviewed people and I've asked them, what is one of our portfolio companies that we've invested in that you wouldn't make an investment in and why? And then they can't even come up with one company that we've invested in. So not only knowing the larger institution, but knowing a little bit more about each portfolio organization allows you to speak very well to what that organization does, why they do it, and it makes you seem even more interested and curious. The reality is, and this is another tip of mine, curiosity is what trumps everything in this sector. If you are curious and you're willing to go that extra mile, you're going to find yourself being able to speak be very articulate about many things within the sector and also the underlying kind of portfolio organizations of an organization that you're looking to move into. And then I also want to talk about two more things, and these kind of go hand in hand. Prepping for the career transition and actually making a career transition plan. Oftentimes we might head off on a road trip. Most people don't just like put their GPS away and just hit the road, right? Or if you're baking a cake for the first time, most of the time you have a recipe in front of you, right? Same thing goes when you are looking to make a transition from a career perspective. I think not only doing that research and mapping out the sector, but also being able to use your articulation of your why. One, it helps you save so much time. And if you have a very clear career transition plan, you'll know your timing, you know very well the short list of funds or institutions that you're looking at, and you know when and why you're reaching out to them and who you need to reach out to. So it brings all of these things together. The network that you should be building, the research reports that you should be reading, at what point in the year they typically do hiring. This is actually quite cyclical and it's very continuous, and we kind of know this in the sector. So I would say there are some resources that we have at Impact Finance Pro to help people create that career transition plan and prep for the transition. But it's something that oftentimes people skip that step and you just see them aimlessly applying for jobs that might not be a good fit for them. There's nothing worse than seeing a really great candidate landing a job in the industry and realizing 3 months into the role, like, this is not my definition of impact, or this isn't really an organization that I'm excited about. And then you see them transitioning out, and that's really a shame, because they could have been connected to an organization that could really leverage their talent, and they could actually finally have that dream job that they've been looking for. So I know that that was a very rapid, rapid view of my top 10 tips. There are some additional resources that we have at Impact Finance Pro, so I heavily recommend taking a look at our jobs board. We also have a digital program to help people go through that transition that kind of lays out the landscape of the impact finance sector, but also the career landscape, going through the interview process, articulating your why, doing the tripod method as well. So that's all stuff that we have on demand that can be done at your own pace. And then I do things like one-on-one coaching as well, to help people get a little bit more support, nuanced support throughout the process. So I believe I might be at time. I'm not sure, Ani, if I have a few more moments, but that's what I wanted to share so far. Those are my top 10 tips for transitioning into the impact finance space. And hopefully we can share some more time together in one of the breakout rooms for me to go into more detail or answer any specific questions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ashley. I think those were incredibly valuable. And I've put some other resources in the chat as well. And I definitely would check out what the different job boards that she's mentioned and the resources at Impact Finance Pro. So what we're going to do now is exactly what Ashley suggested, is we're actually going to go into some networking. So we're going to do 2 different rounds of speed networking. So those of you that are in the Impact Investing Executive Education course are very familiar with this. So these rounds are 6 minutes each, and you're going to have 3 people per group. So you're going to have 2 minutes each. To introduce yourself, talk about where you're from, and then talk about your current career journey. So where are you looking to go, and where are you right now? Now, I would encourage everyone to remember